right, so what we have here is a table of data, and we have to figure out which one of these 4 box plots correctly corresponds to the given set of data. So in trying to determine what box plot matches up with a certain data set, what you should do is create a 5-number summary of your data. Because really, a 5-number summary is what constructs a box and whisker plot, so you can use that to correctly identify the proper box plot. Now, a 5-number summary is the minimum of your data. It is the location of Q1, and the median is the middle value of your data. Then we have Q3 and the maximum. And it is these 5 points which define the borders of your 4 quartiles. Now, if you take a look at the data, you should notice that the data is already ordered for us. It is ordered from greatest to least. So the minimum is 225 points scored, and the maximum is 336 points scored. So for the minimum, we're going to write 225. For the maximum, we're going to write 336. Now, the next thing that we should do is figure out what the median is. Now, we have 14 pieces of data, which is an even data set. Now, if your data set is even, you will not have any middle number. So what you're going to do in that case is count half of your data, and half of 14 is 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and draw a line right in the middle of your data to separate one half of your data from the other half of your data. So really we have 2 middle numbers. Now because these 2 middle numbers are the same, that is going to be our median value. Now if they were 2 different numbers, you would simply add them together and divide by 2 to figure out what number would be in the middle of those numbers. All right, now let's figure out the location of Q1. Now Q1 is the first quartile of your data, or the point that divides the first quartile from your second quartile. Now if you look before the median, we have 7 values, and 7 is an odd number. So basically Q1 is finding the median of the first half of your data. And because we have 7 pieces of data, this 4th number right here is right in the middle. So 265 is Q1. And we basically do the same thing for Q3. We take the upper half of our data and we figure out what the median is of it. And this number is directly in the middle of these 7 values. So 315 is the value of Q3. All right, now we have all of the information we need to see which one of these box plots matches up with our data set. All right, let's start with our minimum value here. Now, if you take a look at all of these box plots, the minimum is the same for all 4 of these box plots. So we cannot determine which one of these box plots matches this data set by looking at the minimum value. As you can see, this dot is lined up right at 225 for all 4 box plots. So let's go to Q1. Now Q1 is the location at the beginning of your boxes. So when this line here turns into a box, it is that point that is Q1. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line straight down to the bottom. And if you notice, A, B, and C have a Q1 that are identical, and D has one that is different. And Q1 is supposed to be 265. And as we can see, choice A, B, and C all have a Q1 value of 265, but choice D does not. So we can go ahead and eliminate choice D. All right, let's go to the median value here. Now, we know that the answer is either A, B, or C. And we should note that B and C have the same median of 290, and choice A has a median of 295. And our median is supposed to be 290, so we can eliminate choice A. Now, we can look at Q3 for choice B and choice C and compare those. Now, Q3 is at the end of your boxes, so for choice B, Q3 is at 315, and for C, Q3 is at 300. Well, our Q3 value is supposed to be 315, so we can eliminate choice C. So we have determined that B is the correct box plot that matches up with our data set. All right, let's do another example. So we have a box and whisker plot here that represents the test scores earned by Mrs. Richardson's class. And the question being asked is, what percent of the class earned at least a 75%? Now, one thing that we should really understand about box plots is that from the minimum value to the value of Q1, that is the first quarter of your data. And then from Q1 to the median, that is the second quartile of your data. And from the median to Q3 is the third quartile of your data. And from Q3 to the maximum, that is the fourth quartile of our data. In fact, from here to here would be the first 25% of our data. From here to here is the second 25% of our data. And from the median to Q3 is our third quartile, or our third 25% of our data. And from Q3 to the maximum, of course, that is our last 25% of data. So that is why the two boxes in the middle are commonly referred to as the middle 50 of your data. Now, this can be rather confusing because when you take a look at the distance of each one of these quartiles, notice that they have different shapes. This quartile is longer than the second quartile, and the second quartile is skinnier than this third quartile. However, we should understand that each quartile has the same amount of data lying within it. The reason that these have different shapes is because the spread of each quarter just might be greater or smaller. For example, the data that lies within the first quartile of our data is more spread out than the data that lies within the second quarter of our data. So that means all of the numbers in the second quartile are more similar to each other as opposed to the numbers that are located in this first quartile. Well, back to the question which is being asked, what percent of the class earned at least a 75? Well, on our number line, 75 is right here. And if we draw a line straight upwards, that splits the third quartile in half. Well, we know that at least means starting at that point or more, so we're trying to figure out what percent of the class earned a 75% or higher. Well, we know that everybody here in the fourth quartile earned higher than a 75, and that's 25% of our data, and then half of this quarter did. And half of a quarter, or half of 25, is 12.5%. So we could add 12.5% to 25%. So we would say that is about 37.5% of the class that earned at least a 75%. So looking at our answer choices, we know that 37.5% is not less than 25%, but it is between 25% and 50%. And it definitely is not between 50 and 75, and it is definitely not more than 75%. So the answer would be B, between 25% and 50%.